everybody, and welcome to another episode of Eating at a Meeting. I am in North Carolina, and my friend Jaclyn right there is in New York City. Jaclyn Bernstein, how are you, my friend?
Excited to always be here with you. We need to do this, though. Forget the eating, but cocktailing next time.
Oh, totally. Well, and I don't cocktail. I'm going to say this word. I don't like to say it anymore, but I mocktail. But I've had the best 3 non-alcoholic beverages the last 2 nights here in Charlotte at a restaurant called Fin and Finno. Oh my gosh, their bar setup is phenomenal. And they're like, what do you want? I'm like, no sugar, some ginger. I had the 3 best drinks. So it was awesome.
Well, that's great. That's great. Mind over matter.
Mind over matter. Okay, we already have 5 people watching us. Woohoo! And so I'm so excited. Jaclyn Bernstein is the co-founder, co-president of Empire Force Events. Did I get that right?
Yes, co-founder. We actually bought the company that I worked at for a couple of years out of college.
Okay.
So yes, we do, and I am the president owner now. So yeah,
yeah,
we've been around.
We've been around for a long time. Yeah, I calculated it the other day, like 28 years or something like that. So, and Jeff Goldblatt is a good friend of ours, how I got into this industry really deeply. So, but for everybody that's listening,
shout out, he is the founding president of the International Special Events Society, ISIS, which then changed to the International Live Events Association, ILEA. Yep. That's how Tracy and I know. We grew up together, not only in organizations, but also building those organizations for our industry. Definitely.
Some fun times way back then.
Yes.
Yes, some that I need to forget. But so Jaclyn and I were just at IMEX 3 weeks ago, which is the largest meetings industry convention. Over 15,000 people were there. And we did a panel presentation on this topic, Savoring the Savings, how to navigate rising event food and beverage costs. So she and I and John McKinnon and Stephanie, whose name I can't pronounce correctly, so I'm not going to try, were there, and we had standing room only.
Yes.
100 people, right, for our session.
Which we find odd because when you're at IMEX and you're there at the largest trade show for events, meetings, incentives, corporate travel, you think they'd want to be on the trade show floor making connections, but they came to listen to what we had to say.
So exactly. Yeah. It was really, education there is really, really strong. So I was really excited about that. So we're going to kind of talk about what we talked about there and share our strategies with you. Please, if you've got comments, please, where's my little tag there? If you've got questions or comments, please put them in the chat, no matter wherever you're watching. I know I've got 4 or 5 people here watching. I don't know if you're on LinkedIn, Facebook, but please comment and let us know if you've got any ideas or you have questions about what we're saying. And then also if you're doing anything, tag Jaclyn and I as well. So I want to just start off with the first idea that you had that we talked about. And because you're in New York, I like the idea that you said, don't necessarily use the food and beverage at an event. You've got all these fantastic venues in New York City. Just book the rooms and then use those events, spaces. Talk about how you work with your clients on that.
Sure. And let me just give you a little background on me so people can understand why.
Yeah. Please, that's a good idea. Yes.
So I own Empire Force Events, and we are New York City's longest independent and locally owned destination management company. So very proud about that, to still be here and do what we do. We take an approach to the event productions that we do with a very destination management focus, and focusing on obviously the greatest city on earth here in New York. We service New York City, New York State, New Jersey, and Connecticut in the tri-state metropolitan area. But if our client wants us to go, if we can make it here, we can make it anywhere. So we do travel. And I do have to give a shout out. I am a proud board of director of New York City Tourism and Conventions, our official destination marketing organization. So really feel that I personally, if you can't tell from the accent, I'm from Brooklyn. I epitomize what events in New York City are all about. So with that being said, to answer your question, Tracy, that yes, you, the viewer out there, has to do a meeting. And for the most part, you're many times going to be in our 120,000 plus hotel rooms here in New York City. And what we also feel is that you should also take advantage of some of the greatest culinary experiences in New York. I was honored to be a guest last night at the Michelin Star Awards ceremony.
Oh, awesome.
So it was the first time they did it in New York City, but combined it with Chicago and DC. So obviously there are just so many fabulous places to wine and dine, or mocktail, as you do. And it's not always about the schmanciest restaurants, and no disrespect to all the most fabulous chefs that are here, but there are some down and dirty, great New York institutions. So one night you could be going to Le Bernardin with Chef Eric Repair or Danielle Balut or Jean Georges. The next night, we should take you to Katz's Delicatessen, the Lower East Side, which is an institution. So in going back to Tracy's comment and question, you can many times bring that food and beverage to your hotel if you're utilizing them. So we all know that food and beverage, and it's not only those prices that are skyrocketing and high, but it's also the labor and the administrative and service charges. We understand it. We respect it. It's how we deal with it that makes us better planners for the client. So sometimes the corkage or serving fee of external food and beverage at the hotel, combined with what it actually costs, could be less than what you're paying at the property. So you might not do it for every single event, but it might be fun to do for an afternoon break or maybe your breakfast. And being innovative and having a very open conversation, not only with we had this discussion at IMEX, your CSM, which really is not a convention services manager, your ESM, your event services manager, your catering people, and even their chef, to say, we understand, I mean, this is a profit center for them, but you have a cost to cover, but how can we make it also, pun intended, palatable financially for us in what we need to accomplish if we're on property for such an extended amount of time.
And do you find a lot of chefs in New York open to doing that?
Well, we first feel they think, well, we can do this. We can make a sandwich or an experience or that type of dish. So I think they're open to it once we know, okay, we're not doing it for every one of your lunches, but for one lunch, we have to give them an experience that is very New York. Because for us, we always feel, a lot of people say, well, why are my hotel rooms so small in New York City? Well, and the pricing are high. Well, you're paying for the opportunity to be at our resort, which is all of New York. So for the most part, you're not always staying on property for all your experiences, your evening events. There is a reason why you're in New York, so you could experience what our city has to offer. You know, one night it might be dining at a restaurant. One night it might be doing a private event at the Statue of Liberty at Ellis Island. So there are just fabulous places to go. So the hotels have to realize that it would be a shame to come to New York, but be on property the entire time. But if we have to be there, let's say for the breakfast and lunches or an afternoon reception, to say to the chef, we have to make sure that they're getting, you know, a taste of it. And how can we combine that financially and logistically with you at the property?
Well, it reminds me of that. Did you watch The Bear, the television show The Bear?
No, I haven't yet. I'm a Psycho Law and Order watcher, and SVU, so I know I need to watch that show.
You do need to watch that show, but there's one episode that he runs out and gets a pizza or something from another restaurant and brings it in because he overheard somebody at the table having a conversation like, oh, I've been here for 4 days and I haven't had the opportunity to get this. And they run down and go get it. So so it's allowing that example or allowing that experience for sure.
And do a pizza tasting, which we have done in the hotel.
Really?
So not only get it from one place, there's a lot of arguments about what the best pizza is. Again, being from Brooklyn, we feel our pizza is the best pizza. You know, it ends in ER. Anything that ends with an A ends really in the ER when you say it. So there's ways to make it innovative and fun for your guests. And again, being respectful of the property of the hotel.
Right. Okay. So there was a conversation in the Facebook group, and we brought this up in the session too, was coffee.
Yes.
And you and I laughed before we actually did the IMEX session. Is like, I talked to one lady here in North Carolina, and her coffee is $75 a gallon. And she was flabbergasted that somebody was charging $200 a gallon. And somebody in Canada was like, what? You know, they're like charging $10 a gallon. I don't know. But and John had a really good idea. But and I'm going to bring that up, but do you have any thoughts on the cost of coffee and how to make it less expensive?
The crazy thing about coffee. I don't drink coffee. Yes, I
Me
like this.
neither.
So we don't drink coffee, but we're smart planners and knowing that practically everybody else does. And there's a lot of different ways. It's not just the simple cup of coffee, but with everything else that they offer with it, and teas, et cetera. So we know that service is very important with soft beverages, kicking off a morning meeting, et cetera. And then throughout the day, which is another part of this conversation, you know that they'll only keep it out for a certain amount of time, and then they charge you for the replenish and any snack. So look, everyone needs to make money. We respect that, but there's a way you have to rein it in. One of the suggestions that we have come up with that, you can bring your own cup of coffee into the hotel. So maybe pick a place that's close by the hotel and say, everyone, it's on us. Maybe a great way to get a sponsor, someone to host your coffee, and find, I don't want to take away from Starbucks. Maybe find a local establishment, a bodega or something up the street, and host it there, do some entertainment, have everyone come in, whether they buy it themselves or it's being hosted and paid for. And then they just walk in with their, it's our pleasure to serve you cups into the hotel. No one can stop you from bringing in a cup of coffee. You're not bringing in an entire breakfast layout spread, but there's a way to combat this and just say, for that one breakfast, and you're obviously going to have to tell your hotelier, your planner, we're not doing coffee that day. We're letting them go out and get their own coffee, and we're starting the meeting, let's say at 10 o'clock as opposed to 9 o'clock. And that's what they're going to do. There might be some sort of fee for them to clean it up afterwards, but what a great way to give them a destination experience and a great way to save financially. But it is outrageous what a gallon of coffee is costing.
Exactly, because it turns out to be $21 a cup when it's at $200 a gallon. John had a really good suggestion in our session too, is that he actually sourced out like some coffee vendors to come into this space and do specialty coffees. And I took that idea, and he said he saved a couple grand, probably, I think he said even 10 grand on doing that. And I did that. I'm researching that for an event coming up, and I got some pricing. It was dramatically less expensive than what the hotel was for just the plain old coffee. But the hotel came back and said, well, you need to use our specified vendor. Sure. And I did get a quote. I had gotten a quote from that specified vendor, and unfortunately the prices was 3 times as much
than what exchanges back there, which needs to be.
Yeah.
We can understand that.
We can.
And suggest, go ahead, please.
I was going to say, and we're going to do it. One of our sponsors and one of our exhibitors wants to have the coffee in their booth. And so these are like lattes and espressos and things like that. So, and they can do up to 100 coffees an hour. So during that time frame, I'm going to reduce the number of coffee that I'm actually purchasing, because people are going to me, they're going to be there for 5 hours or whatever. I can reduce how much coffee I'm going to actually spend on, put out. Does that make sense?
No, I can understand that. Yeah. And I believe, though, that the planner, wherever you're going, whether it's New York or elsewhere, should speak with their hotel ESM and their chefs and catering people and ask them, what relations do you have? Maybe it's a local coffee, not so much a vendor with a cart, but is it a local coffee house that can come and do this? I would suggest that hotels should partner with that. Why should they just make their own random coffee when everyone is so focused on a coffee experience? Right.
Exactly. Somebody just commented here too that we skip the decaf and tea at our coffee breaks due to low consumption. We just give guests who request those a gift card to the lobby coffee. That's smart.
Okay. Same kind of example elsewhere to get it done.
Yeah, because they're charging you $110 or $200 for that gallon of tea too. And then somebody just posted as well, we started leading decaf. We do have a number of tea drinkers, which when we were in Vegas, the vice president of catering services and catering and convention services for MGM, she said that tea actually costs them more money than the coffee does, which I thought was interesting.
Well, then maybe along the lines of what everyone just said. Yes, tea bags. That's exactly it. Tea bags versus just hot water. So what a way, I mean, even what a way to save money. And even water coolers.
Yep.
Because sometimes now people don't want to give out bottled or boxed water, and they use the cooler. They also dispense some hot water. I don't know if it's really hot, but there's ways to be creative and to talk and to ask the people on property wherever you're going to, what are some of the ways other people have done this, and just be smart about it. But I do like the idea of going to a local bodega in New York City and having some entertainment there and picking up.
I do too. So I'm going to answer this question about it is what Tori told me is that the tea drinkers actually take like 5 tea bags and they take the honey and everything else. And that's why the tea ends up costing them more than the coffee does. So, they're not serving the best coffee when taking 5 tea bags, costs a lot more. But the other thing that we did do that John and I, or we all talked about too, was negotiating the price of your coffee in your concessions in your contract. So one of my clients negotiates that they will pay no more than $110 a gallon for coffee. And that is in the concessions. And somebody just said that they don't believe the price of tea is from stealing the tea bag.
The reason they're taking extra tea bags is that they're putting them in their bag and using them at the next event that they go to.
Exactly. Yes. Or in their room or something like that. But that's what I was told. So, but yeah.
Go ahead.
Negotiate the price of your coffee and your tea in your concessions, in your contract. So it's written, as well as soda and water.
We talked about this at IMEX, and I love, Tracy, that you used the word concession, because that is an industry, don't like the word standard, but it is a typical word that is utilized. I personally, and here at Empire, like to refer to them as value adds. We don't want to go into an organization, whether it be a hotel or a venue, whoever it may be. Someone just wrote us an email yesterday. Let us know what you want. We'll see what concessions we can give you. Concession to us always sounds like we're conceding. We're giving you something for free. We're not happy about it. We're going to reduce it, but we're going to concede to. Would rather say, here's the value adds. Here's what we're going to throw in complimentary. Make it sound like a positive. I would love if we can get rid of that word concession and make it more about, here's what we're going to give to you, part of our service. That's just how we produce our events and service with our company. So just a little thought there.
No, I like that. It does make it a positive. It's well, I hope it's not just because it's like the 1-800 phone calls, free phone calls from your hotel room.
Right.
That comes with your resort fee. Free 1-800 phone calls from your.
Who's actually using that phone in the hotel room anyway?
Nobody. I don't know why they still put that in there. Okay, so there was what was the other thing that we were talking about? How do you have you found creative ways to do the plated versus the buffet, and which ones or have you found to be less expensive ways to do that with your catering partners?
Sure. And the catering partner could be not only at the hotel, but at an off-property venue, again, because we should be utilizing them and giving your guests, no matter where you are, an experience outside the hotel property. So there's a lot of reasons why there needs to be a seated plated meal, and there's reasons why the stations, which I think we're all using that term now, as opposed to experiences, food experience, as opposed to just the ye olde buffet, right? And sometimes you could still do a combination of both. We have a seat for every tush, if I may, but you also have stations so they get to experience different food in different areas, get them moving around. One of the things that we did discuss with the plated meal is that at a lunch, most people are not necessarily eating those desserts. So take that dessert that's already, let's say, included in the 3-course meal, and then make that a station later in your afternoon break. Now, there could be reasons why the hotel needs to charge additionally for the housemen to set up those tables, and later on that they have different service staff. We understand that about service. No one ever wants to beat up service. We would love to have some labor pricing to be a little less expensive, but we understand in order to service anything properly, you as your venue and catering hall, hotel need to staff that properly. But think of ways to not just do that typical seated meal all the time and convert that. Even at dinners, a lot of time you want to have a dessert reception. So think of a way that potentially you could keep that price for that plated meal, but then lower what the break or a dessert reception would be by combining forces, so to speak. And asking them, what could we do to lower that price if we make that now a dessert reception or display?
Yep. And Nancy says we do that for the PM break. And I actually, there's one brand that does charge like 3% replate fee. There's another brand that I haven't been charged for it. I asked another hotelier coming up and I said, well, do you allow us to do that? And she's like, yeah, but I don't like it. And I said, why don't you like it? She's like, because my goal is to make you spend more money on food. And I'm like, but I don't have more money to spend on food. So this is what I'm going to do. Yeah.
But there's a great way to make more money on food. I hate the word sell us. Promote to us an upgrade, right?
Right.
It's not so much, I hate that phrase, quantity or quality, but we don't need necessarily more than 5 different desserts, but maybe you're upgrading what they are at a higher investment. I don't want to say more expensive because that sounds negative, but a higher investment, whether it's an entree or a dessert or a wine, whatever it may be. I mean, we're all in the wrong business because we're not doubling or tripling the price of bottles of wines at the hotels. That's or restaurants. That's what we should be doing. But that is a great way to get us to invest more money in food and beverage, not so much as the amount of stuff, but what the upgrade could potentially be.
Right. Oh, I like that idea because, and actually yesterday in my education session at Exhibitor, somebody was asking, I need to meet that food and beverage minimum, right? But I'm also trying to cut food costs. So I'm like, so do that upgrade, right? Say, instead of doing this, I don't want you to serve a 9-ounce piece of steak, still do, but get a tenderloin versus, whatever, right? Upgrade the food. So you're spending more money on it but using less, ordering less. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah. And what ties in with that, and you said it before about the number of guests that are coming in. We're not saying our event, we have 500 guests coming, but we're going to under guarantee you and be sneaky about it. But what if the event is also on a flow? And we're never going to have 500 people in the room at the exact same time. And it might be a 3-hour reception and they're going to flow. There might not be a reason to guarantee the 500, but to guarantee a number that's mutually agreed upon to make it, again, palatable, that we never want you to run out of food. There is enough food, but that you're not sitting there with it all plated for 500 or plated or set up. As a station and a reception for 500 guests, whereas you might not reach that capacity up until an hour and a half or 2 hours into the event.
Right.
So that's always, important as well. The other thing is we always ask venues, what's your overage? And many times there's a 5%, although the other day I heard there's no overage, which I find that hard to believe. You're just going to have 500 of whatever X the amount of dishes are that are on the station. But to also say to them, how could we then offset if we are going to get more people? Like, for instance, we guarantee 500 and then you click 550. Did you really make 50 more servings of everything for us? So again, we respect, that's a way to make money, right? The band plays overtime, they're going to charge you for that time. But there needs to be some compromise or honest understanding that if you're not necessarily cooking for all that, we could pay for the staff that you might have gotten, but we really want to understand why we're paying that additional funds if there really wasn't the amount of food there to actually service it, substantiate it.
No, that's a really good point. And then how do you click it? And it reminds me of and Carolyn, I'm going to come to your post in a second. My client for 8 years in a row did their event in Las Vegas, and their receptions were on the show floor to get people into the show floor, but his numbers were always like, let's say 800 people would come through the show floor. But when we went to Orlando and we were at the Rose in Shingle Creek, and I'm not bashing the hotel, but it's in a position where people can't go out and walk to a restaurant, right? Whereas in Las Vegas, you have tons of restaurants there, but his numbers were higher in Florida because nobody had a place to walk to go to dinner. And so he was like, the hotel's lying. They're charging you for more people. And I'm like, they don't want to be in the kitchen trying to throw together a whole bunch of extra food.
Right.
But it's really kind of paying attention to that as well. If you're going to go to Vegas, cut your numbers because people are going to go there and go out to dinner instead of going to your reception. Carolyn posted in here, do we really need AM and PM breaks? Do people eat those at home or at the office? I do.
Great
Carolyn,
point.
Yeah. But I'm not eating brownies and cookies and such. But
that's a good point. If the breakfast, I'm just using before we get to the breaks, breakfast 7 to 9 breakfast. At about 8:40, most people are running in there and grabbing something. They're not at the omelet station at 7 a.m. in the morning. So you have to figure out how that's going to work. And the breaks, maybe it's something where it's carry and go as opposed to something that's open. Something that's, healthy, something healthy and something not healthy or, fun, fancy, or find things that are local to your destination. New York City, black and white cookies, give them to them wrapped so they can
take Oreos.
No, those are black and white cookies. Look it up. I'm not going to tell you now why there's so much about their flavor, but that's something to do. Or have an egg cream bar. You know what's not an egg cream, don't you?
No.
Egg and cream. Okay, you bet chocolate syrup from Brooklyn, kosher chocolate syrup, seltzer from the bottle, and milk. That's how you make an egg cream. Anyway, swirl it with a pretzel. So pretzel rod. So anyway, try to find things that are indigenously destination, and packaged foods are just a great way to do that AM PM break. Someone always wants something a little sweet or savory, but you don't want to be wasteful.
Well, and I love that idea, because then you could do that black and white cookie. Somebody just said black and white cookies are the best and totally not Oreos.
Well played.
Carolyn, thank you for educating you.
Although the Oreo was invented in New York City at the National Biscuit Company, Nabisco, which is now where Chelsea Market is. Okay, where the Food Network.
Really? Yeah. Wow. Okay, I toured the Chelsea Market. That's a really cool place to go. Yeah. Okay, so but I like the doing that prepackaged cookie, the black and white cookies, bringing them in, and if a sponsor is sponsoring that break, getting their logo put on it, right? And that's bringing that from the outside and saving that cost.
Yes, that is something that we talked about as well. So the venue might say, wow, you're bringing in 1,000 cookies. We were going to sell you our cookies. Now you're getting them branded. We understand that there could be some handling fee. We have to respect that. You know, we're in the handling business as event producers. So we want to be able to service properly and charge fairly for it and talk about it. Don't always have the email back and forth. Get on the phone and talk about it and say, how can we make this, again, financially and a sound for us, that'll palatable, financially palatable, to pun intended there.
All right, so Nancy just shared the Wikipedia story about the black and white cookies. Thank you, Nancy. I appreciate that. Oh my gosh, you guys are making me crack up. Okay, so the other thing too is one thing this summer, it's knowing, kind of going on your flow thing, right? Your conversation about the flow. We had a closing reception or closing lunch, and my client, based on historical purposes, was like, we have 450 people come to this lunch typically. And I went and looked at the rooming list, and the room block dropped from 600 people to 300 people that day. And I asked him, I'm like, where do these people live that are leaving today? And he's like, what do you mean? I'm like, because we were in Palm Desert. I'm like, all of those people are going to get up. They're East Coasters. Those East Coasters are going to get on that 6 a.m. flight and go, not going to be at lunch. And he's like, wow. And we ended up serving only 300 people. So I did beforehand cut our numbers by 200 and only served 300 for lunch. So I saved 150 people times $75 in that budget. So thinking through those things, paying attention to your the ebb and flows of your attendees.
That is very smart. And that's where working with, let's say, a company like your destination management company partner, and don't say to them, you're just dealing with the transfers, don't worry about it on lunch. Well, let me let you know that you have so many people leaving earlier, whether it be an individual transfers or a gang departure. If they're going to be able to take coaches to the airport and just leave on their own, they're going to essentially want to leave earlier. So that is a great way to then to be able to save that food and beverage. And that boxed lunch concept, never enjoyed that. It can never always be, I don't want to say never. It's not always as pretty or as exciting presentation, but maybe you don't do something in the ballroom. Maybe there's a terrace at the hotel and it is a grab and go. It's not a full set station or buffet, but there's some clever, cute little bag with elements thrown in there that they can enjoy outside or they can take with them.
Yep.
So the hotel also might, again, they might be happy then to be able to help you to save financially, but obviously they need the labor to pull it together. So there's clever ways you can, again, talk to them and see that afternoon after the last lunch or breakfast is not going to be well attended, but we need to give them something. What are some innovative ways that we can do it and also save some funds?
Exactly. And hopefully hotels are in there. I'm like, I still want to pay you for the food, but we need to figure this out. All right. So Nancy posted here that we need to order Fox's Ubet on Amazon, which is, I looked it up. It's going,
Nancy, I want to know you. You're hired. We'll go right out to Brooklyn. Here in New York City, you can go to a grocery store. And there's one right across the street, and we can buy that on the shelf. Probably not many other places in the country.
All right. And then box lunches need to be elevated. Carolyn, I 100% agree. Oh my gosh, they're just hideous in most cases.
A tote bag or something.
Yeah, exactly. That's actually a great sponsor opportunity too. I'm like, if you've got that last bag to put stuff in and, give it to them for their lunch or something. Nancy's like, I'm in New Jersey. I can buy this for you, Tracy. Oh, by the way, Nancy, I'm coming to New Jersey in April, so we need to hook up.
All right, we're coming out there as well. I'll bring
Okay,
the silver spritzer.
Okay, awesome. Yay. Mark Cooper, you just got 3 new people for the IAC conference in April. And by the way, that's my birthday. So we need to celebrate my birthday while we're there. Okay, so let's get back to food and beverage costs.
Oh, okay.
I know. We're having too much fun with chocolate and white cookies.
Can I jump in? You mentioned something before that I wanted to also elaborate on. Food and beverage minimums. To all you people out there that are at venues, caterers, et cetera, and we ask you, hey, we want to do an event in this private room or this ballroom, whatever it may be, and we get back, well, our food and beverage minimum is this. That doesn't do anyone any good in planning unless you state the food and beverage minimum is this flat number. Our menus start at X. So we then can figure out based on whether we have, is it 20 people or 220 people, what then the food and beverage, that price of that F&B menu is to fit into your F&B minimum. There's math that has to be done there. It's not just, oh, the food and beverage minimum is this. Great, we're going to meet that and that's all, because your menus might topple over that, or we're going to need to add to those menus to make sure we meet that minimum. So that is really important. And something else, Tracy, we talked about at IMEX and we talked about in planning for in here is that venues and caterers, we respect that you're very proud of your menus. We know it's obviously all going to be wonderful, but us seeing your list of 50 hors d'oeuvres in the planning stage is not as important as your reception includes 8 hors d'oeuvres, 4 hot, 4 cold. That's what we're looking for. We don't necessarily need to know which ones that they are. So it's very important for us when we're going to do a station, a lunch station, how many salads, how many entrees, how many accompaniments, proteins, starches. So we can then compare between, if we have to look at other venues or the menus that we're looking at the pricing, what the actual inclusions are. It's not how many different lettuces are in your salads. It's how many salads are going to be on the station. So it becomes a little more logistical than an innovative menu. There's going to be time to create that menu with you, but not at the planning stages, financially figuring out what we have to invest. And once we start seeing your menus, that menu of 50 hors d'oeuvres, everything's great. Give us some of your signature hors d'oeuvres. This one won an award. This one is the chef's recipe from his grandmother from the old country. This one has a really cool presentation. You should really
love
focus
that. Yeah.
on that. Those are the ways that we as planners need to be able to view menus as opposed to just reading words on a menu. And sometimes your menus are going to be written for us to read to see what everything is. Then we need a menu that we're going to be able to print. Everything should always be printed. Guests should always know what they're dining. There's been a lot of discussion. Do we put the V for vegan, vegetarian, or gluten-free and nuts and all that? We can get into that in a whole nother presentation. But we need to know what it is for us to pick your menu and then what it is for the guests to consume. I've been known, and I mentioned this last night at that Michelin event, to put New York City tap water on the bottom of a menu because we're very proud of our water here. But think of cute ways to elaborate on what the menu items are. So there was a lot I just mentioned, from food and beverage minimums to menus and inclusions. So I'll toss it back to you, Tracy.
Oh, no, I love it. I'm just going to put some comments on here. And Nancy's quoting what we get a lot. Oh, and our menus and prices are changing. I'm like, we're planning a menu for 2024 and your pricing is not going to come out until January 2021 or January 1st, right? I'm like, okay, how do we do that? Somebody, Ingrid, posted on here. Ingrid, thank you for joining us. She said, preach, preach, preach. And then you've got some friends of yours here, Jaclyn, that are visiting.
Oh my God, Anthony, that is my co-founder of the Live Events Coalition of New York and New Jersey during the height of the pandemic.
Oh, awesome. Very cool. And then you've got Mindy here. Pottheiser. Yes.
May I say that's family.
Okay. And then actually somebody here who's posting this, that this was Nancy's got it in here that H is for halal. That's really interesting. I'm going to Canada in 2 weeks, so I will see if they do that. I haven't seen that. So that's pretty cool. But it depends on if you're getting halal, if you're really focusing on that, or if you're that hotel is purchasing halal meats on purpose so they can eliminate having to do the special plates, which is Amelia Eckes used to do that when she worked at a in-house corporate dining facility. She got approval to order all halal meats to serve in the company cafeteria, so she didn't actually have to go out and do personalized plates for those individuals.
Sure. And those that eat halal meat will also interestingly enough, they will also eat kosher meat. So
Right.
kosher meals. So just keep that in mind. That's obviously very prominent here in New York City.
Okay, so and then speaking of kosher meals, there's and I think I've told this, and Nancy, you've probably heard this before, but really paying attention to who asks for those personalized plates, especially the kosher meals, because I did an event last year, and Jaclyn, it was over Passover, and one of the attendees was Orthodox Jew, and so she really needed to have that kosher meal from the kosher caterer. But the other two gentlemen that requested kosher, and in the state of Massachusetts, you can't say this, they wanted kosher style. They wanted to be able to read the ingredients on the food and beverage. So I was labeling for making sure that I was labeling for meat and cheese, or meat and dairy, shellfish and pork. And as long as that, and then during Passover for wheat, because they needed to know that, they were comfortable eating off the buffet as long as that was all labeled. But I ended up saving my client like $2,500 by doing that, by asking those questions.
If they were keeping kosher and they were able to eat off a buffet, I guess many times there's levels of how kosher they're going to be, and how observant they are going to be, and no milk and dairy. So you should ask when you hear someone eating a kosher meal. We've always found that a lot of times the kosher meal is served, but then they want to go see what else is on the station. So
exactly.
And that again is very prominent. Again, I reference being here in New York City, but obviously when your guests are travelers, we need to be cognizant of what they can dine when they are traveling, and what could be done. But you might decide to do a whole meal that's, like you said, halal meat, but you're not necessarily always going to do a meal where there's only meat and not dairy, because it would, let's say, going back to the coffee, right? And there could be milk with coffee. But there's ways to make sure that it becomes financially possible for the entire project, and not just very expensive for those that you want to make sure you're respecting their observances.
Exactly. And Nancy, who is also Jewish, says it depends, right, on what we're ordering. So, and because she and I have talked about this, she's got different levels of her family that eat different styles of kosher.
Well, and I also know that if you're doing a Friday night meal, if there happens to be a corporate event, there's a lot of Catholics that are not going to have meat, right? So I think we need to all be respectful of all faiths and what the food can be. I mean, there's a lot of events that happen sometimes in New York City during Passover, maybe not the first 2 nights, because those are holier days, more of the holiday, but during the week, that it's almost conspicuous by its absence if you don't happen to find matzah on just a station, let's say, that's put out there. So I think there's ways that we all should be up on the general ways to present food during everyone's holidays, and being respectful, of the end of Ramadan, to make sure that if someone is going to be at a meeting, they might leave because they want to be with their family to break their fast and to celebrate that. So
that's a good
really
point.
Important that we all are respectful of that, for anyone's faiths and religions.
Completely agree. Okay, so what haven't we talked about that we talked about in Vegas? Where do you actually, just trends, how do you stay up on the food and beverage trends? I mean, you are in New York City with the plethora of food, but and you just attended that Michelin event. Like, how do you stay up on the trends to understand what people are wanting to eat, whereas what we're getting and seeing from our caterers? How do you combine those two things together to make them mesh?
Sure. And I think this also came about as we were emerging from the pandemic, because it was a time when having an open station and sharing a platter utensil with everybody else was almost seen as a no-no. And now we had the dividers. Remember the plastic dividers back in 20 when we opened it up? So I think we learned from that to see, people missed sharing a platter, or people enjoyed getting their own little plate and taking it off a station. So we watched to see how people just work their way in a room at food stations. Obviously, we're not always the ones that was setting the trend, or what we can be when we're plating the food or presenting the food at a station, but it's seeing what the top restaurants, and a lot of times who makes it a top restaurant, because a critic that eats out all the time decided it was great, or is it becoming popular because some kid is posting it on TikTok and went there with his family? Who knows? You really should all be out there reading magazines and online that is not so much about our industry, but look at Eater, see what they're talking about in the specific dishes that are out there. Look at those new Michelin star restaurants and what are they serving? And a lot of times it's, understand where I'm coming from with this. It's not always about the actual food item, but we are in the event business and profession, and we're presenting things, decorative design and branding. It's what is the plate that's being served on? How are the servers coming in? Are they cloching the food? Are they putting the plate down with everybody else? Is there a big fanfare? So many times your food is going to taste better simply because the way that it's presented, whether it be on a plate or on a station, or how knowledgeable the servers are. I was at an event recently and I asked, well, tell me about this. They said, I don't know, I'm just serving it. Well, that's the wrong answer. Someone should have said, here are the 5 bullet points. Stick them on a Post-it under the bar back, right behind you. And this is what you need to know. And if someone asks a question, say, you know what? I don't know, but I'm going to get someone who will. So there's ways to present food that makes you sit up straighter, pay more attention to it, and really enjoy the way that it's presented. But I do know that a trend, I touched upon this before, is labeling food. People want to know it's not like you're going to print a menu and have every ingredient in there, but people really want to know what they're eating, not only about allergies, but also for being healthy. I love this when you get food, and I really don't like when clients say, well, here are the food restrictions, and someone says, I don't like mushrooms. My thinking is, don't eat mushrooms, right? I don't like mushrooms either, but I'm a big girl and I can work my way around a plate if they're there. So it should really be about allergies. Are you going to need an EpiPen because you ate something? That's what that list is for. It's not about your likes and dislikes. And then being able to try to accommodate as many different types of flavors. Always make sure you have something healthy to combat. That sounds so negative. To offset something that might not be so healthy, right? I'm not eating sweets, but also fruits are very sugary, right? So what else can you give us that can really balance that out? So without getting to specifics of actual foods, that's what, Tracy, you're the expert on. But it's seeing how everything is also presented and seeing what restaurants are doing and then tying that into what your venues, caterers, and hotels can do.
Okay, there's so many things that I want to dissect from that. One is that staffing. I love the idea of that staffing and how is it presented. So how do we work to keep our labor costs down in doing some kind of those presentations? I mean, because it does take a lot to do plated meals, right? 1 or 2 people per plate, or per table, I should say. Right. And then the service staff, how have you seen creative ways to do some of that staffing for those specialty presentations?
It's a crazy answer, but we're not always looking to lower a labor cost by shortchanging the amount of labor. We like having 1 server per table and then whatever backup staff that we do have. So we don't want to say, put 1.5 staff per table. Now they're managing 2 different tables. We've sometimes at events added beverage attendants because we know that particular table, they're heavy drinkers, they're the VIPs. We want to make sure they never have an empty wine glass. So we believe that is something that we should speak to our caterer, our venue, our hotel, whatever it may be, to say to them, what are some of the ways that we can rein in these pricings by not sacrificing your service and being respectful of them? We don't want to beat anyone up because we don't want us to be beaten up either with our labor and our investment of a team to be able to service whatever the element of the event is. So I think you just need to ask that question properly.
I like the way that you phrase that. Yeah.
Something funny, we'll pick out a menu and then we send it to, let's say, the CEO's husband, because the CEO is a woman. And he took some wine class when he was traveling through Italy. So he now knows the wine that he wants to choose. And he comes up with all this wine. And you get to the event and we're excited. We printed it on the menu and it was chosen by so-and-so specifically for you. And then the server gets to the table and says to the guest, holding the bottle where the label's not shown, red or white. It costs absolutely nothing to engage the service and say, tonight, this red one, or have the sommelier, right beside him, was picked by so-and-so and it's a brand. And they went on a trip in Italy and they loved it. So they shipped bottles from the winery. Tell the story of why you are serving, whether it's wine or anything else. And that makes everything taste better. And it doesn't really cost much, maybe just a pre-meeting prior to the event.
That's awesome. I love that idea. And Carolyn piped in here, training for the front of the house buffet staff is so important. Even if the food is good, service will definitely impact the great guest experience. 100% agree with that. And when the servers don't know what they're serving, to me, you're doing a disservice to those servers, right? Because, and I went on a rant a couple of weeks ago. I'm like, give them the tools to do their job and succeed, right? Because you want them to succeed in their jobs, and you want them, because they don't want to just be somebody that's handing out wine, right? They want to feel good about their job. Let's help them do that.
And a lot of times we all see this, unfortunately, and not to knock a convention center, but you see it potentially there more so than at a fine dining restaurant. But even at a convention center, when the sandwiches are all wrapped up, someone should be able to state, I know that, and even if they take out their list, this is what's in this sandwich, this is what's in that sandwich, let them be informed so they can inform us, especially now where it's not just about what do we want to eat, but what's healthy for us to eat, you know?
Right.
Everyone really wants to know what they're dining. Also, no food should ever be served unlabeled. So this might be an investment. A venue might say, we don't print menus for you, but then you can get a sponsor, or you make nice printed menus for a seated dinner. But for stations, venues, we believe, should have that included in their pricing. And they should say to you, our menus are going to look like this. They're going to be in a frame at the beginning of the station, or they're going to be individually labeled like business cards. Or if you want to upgrade, we can put them into these, plastic, beautiful presentations, or that's something that you can do separately. But food should be labeled, and then you're going to want to, edit it, view it, proof it beforehand. Can you put your logo on that, or your client's logo on that, whatever it may be? So food presentation and the way it is labeled, it was done last night at the Michelin event, of course it was, is part of the experience, as opposed to just looking at it and trying to figure out what it is. And if there's a server that says, I'm not really sure, they should know.
I just want to reach through the screen and hug you and kiss you and thank you so much.
I adore that. I will always go with you. I always have a lot to say. It might not always save us our financial investment, and we tell that to our client, but you're investing in what the service and the presentation is going to be. And that's really the offset that we should look at.
Well, and then in the long run, that's going to turn out to be potentially new business for you and a new client, or a big deal that you just landed because you treated that CEO thought that was for them, or whatever, right? That sponsor was for them. So in the end, that little bit of extra money is going to end up being triple to what you thought it would be for your revenue, right? You have to think about doing some of those little things just to increase the experience. Yeah.
Most events start with, we need to find the venue. This happens to us as the event production destination manager company. Are you still there? Tracy, are you still there? Okay, I don't know if she's still there. There you are. Whoops. Oh my God, I didn't know what to do or say. Okay, so people want to find the venue, and so for us, we always ask them, why don't you get us involved in helping you find the venue? That could be a whole nother presentation. But once you find the venue, then the focus is, what is the food and beverage going to cost in that venue? Whether we're bringing an off-prem caterer in, whether it's a venue, again, like the Statue of Liberty, where you have to take barges to the beach on Liberty Island to bring the food there, or it's in a hotel, which is easy because the kitchen is right there. Right? So once you figure out that venue in food and beverage, then you're innovating and creating the event experience. Is it about branding? So, you're going to have all these different colors of red because that's in their logo. Let's make sure that dessert is red, or let's rent a red water glass, right? Is that another way that we can upgrade the experience? So there's a lot to consider that you want to utilize, whether it's an event company like us externally, or if you're working directly with a venue and an ESM or a catering manager, to think about ways that it could be much more of an experience. You read the trade magazines or go online as well, and you see other people doing these events, and you're thinking, how could I do them? You just do them. Look at an interesting idea and think about a way you can incorporate it. That could be a way to invest in your event so you don't feel beaten up about the food and beverage prices, but you're elevating that experience.
I love that. Okay, I think I'm going to get kicked out of this meeting room in a minute.
Oh, I thought we were already.
I know. There's a new education session that starts in 10 minutes. So, all right. And so tell me two fast questions. Okay, what's your favorite food to eat right now?
Fast favorite food to eat right now? Okay.
Well, not fast food. Just
there's no fast food.
Yeah. No,
lots of vegetables, lots of different roasted vegetables. Sorry, it's just the season. I try to eat as healthy as I can.
That's awesome. And what about your drink of choice right now?
Oh, lots of vodka. Vodka seltzer. I am a clean drinker. I drink like a man, straight up vodka, seltzer, and wine, and anything bubbly. Come on, bubbly.
Okay, awesome. All right. And then the last question that I ask everybody is, what does a safe, sustainable, and inclusive food and beverage experience look like to you?
Wow. Okay, there's a lot, like you said, unpack in there. And wait, let me go back to the vodka. Try Ukrainian vodka. Okay.
Okay, really? Okay. Okay.
Yes, yes, yes. Okay. So safe, sustainable. Oh God, there's a lot to do in
Inclusive.
there.
Yep.
Inclusive. I believe as a destination manager approaching events is to see what's indigenous to that destination. So find what is homemade there, what is from, I always at farm to table, what's local, what manufacturers are there, and just to see what we're, that, because there's a lot of sustainability when you're doing that, and that's very inclusive. And incorporate all that into your event and call that out on your menus and excite people about that. I know that's not the best answer to that, but that's a all-inclusive overall answer to that.
I want to go look at the Chelsea market and the farmers markets as well, and find the vendors that are there. Like not only the ones that are selling food, but the ones that are making different gifts that you could give to your clients, right?
And bring them to an event.
Exactly. Yeah. So much fun. So much fun.
Bring them to the event.
Yeah.
So well, when you come to New York, we're going to do that.
Okay, let's do that. I'm going to come up early.
And I guess Nancy, who's in New Jersey, whoever this Nancy is, she's coming with us.
And Carolyn's in New York area as well, so we'll bring her down too. And we need to do another session on just designing food and beverage event spaces, right? What goes into that. So let's do that, and maybe we can get some of our other former ISIS friends involved in that.
ILEA friends.
ILEA, I know. I have friends of ILEA involved in that, because I think designing that room space for events is really important.
Sure, and flow, the flow, not only just the look, but how the guests are going to flow through and experience it.
All right, we got to thank you both for a great session, another great session, and thanks for the information. Thank you, whoever you said that. So I appreciate that. Ingrid said that. So appreciate everybody being here. Stay tuned next week. Same place. No, same time, different place. Where will I be? I will be in Florida next week. So I will be coming from you live from having just been at the FICP convention. So if you're going to be at FICP, reach out to me. And then the following week, I'll be in Canada. So.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, I know. All up and down. Jaclyn, I love you dearly. Thank you so much.
I love you too. I am so honored. And all of you out there, if you want to keep in touch, find me on Instagram and Facebook.
And I do have that. Where did it go? Where's Savoring? I deleted your thing. Jaclyn, it's right down there. Jaclyn_Bernstein. And make sure you do the CLYN.
Yes. On the invite, it was backwards. It was all okay. As I always say, the check will clear. And that's on Instagram, and then just Jaclyn Bernstein on Facebook and LinkedIn.
Yes. Okay. Awesome. Thank you, my friend.
I'm honored, Tracy. This is great. You have totally made an entire career of focusing on these specifics. So it's been an honor to be a part of that journey with you.
Thank you so much. I'll talk to you soon. Okay.
Bye, everyone. Bye.